Energy dependence. The administration plans to buy 2.7 million barrels of oil to help replenish the nation's much depleted emergency stockpile. Last year, the White House sold off more than 40% of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to help limit rising fuel prices, leaving that stockpile at its lowest level since the early 1980s. Joining us now is U.S. Oil and Gas Association President Tim Stewart. Tim, great to see you this morning. Let's sort of start with context, if we wouldn't. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve and the Biden administration selling it off to lower fuel prices in the short term. How unprecedented is that in your mind? And help us understand, what was the purpose of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve?
Sure. Originally the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was designed to address disruptions to crude supplies, but not necessarily the high prices. And prior to last year, the largest release, was 31 million barrels during Desert Storm. Hurricane Katrina was 30 million barrels. But in just over 12 months ago, the administration initiated this largest drawdown in our history because they needed to get through an election cycle, not necessarily a hurricane or a major military conflict. And so now we're at a 30-year low, lowest back since 1983 when we were filling it up. And back last fall when oil dropped below $70 a barrel, the administration started to dip its toe into this. This latest announcement puts for January buy, puts about 12 million barrels. They just need 168 million more to get us back up to that 21 levels, and another 300 million or so to fill it all the way up. It's going to be very expensive, and it's going to take a long time.
So there's several problems here. Let's focus on two. First of all, I'll put the numbers that you kind of talked about right there up on the screen. 286 million barrels of oil released since the Biden administration has taken office. I believe we have that graphic. And you talked about historically 30 million was big. Desert Storm, Katrina. So again, 286 versus 30, down 40%. I think the first problem you have to point out is that I would think represents a threat to national security, because you don't know what could come down the line. What type of military action or natural disaster could predicate the necessity for a bigger release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and you've already depleted it by 40%.
That's right, and the issue is not just filling it up. We have to fill it up with the right grade of crude that the refiners can actually use. The refiners, particularly close to where the Strategic Petroleum Reserve rests, they still need that heavy sour crude that we relied on for decades. And right now we're producing mostly light sweet crude. And that's why we have to export so much. So it's a two-pronged process. Well, we've got to fill it up at reasonable levels. It's not costing the taxpayer too much. If you recall, during the COVID collapse, President Trump wanted to completely top it off at $16, $17 a barrel. So that's one problem. But the other problem is we need investments in the refineries, which allow them to be able to refine more of that light sweet crude that we're producing. Administration has made it very clear through their actions, their regulatory actions, they'll do everything possible to make that difficult as well. So they've really worked themselves into a box here, and there is a strategic and a global security issue that is at rest here. If there is a major disruption, we're going to be in a world of hurt. And so we've been encouraging them, look, do this. First of all, don't do this. And now that we're saying we've got to speed up the process of filling this with the right kind of crude.
Yeah, a two-pronged process, as you point out, and what I was leading towards was it's a two-pronged problem as well. You've compromised potential national security, and secondarily, you just conducted bad business. Now you're having to buy all of this oil to fill back up to get to a place where you have a sustainable Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Tim, thanks so much for being with us this morning and talking about this issue.
Thanks, Will.
All right. I'm